As a kid. Oh, okay. So the one mistake I did as a kid and nilipokea viboko mpaka nika change my way. What was I? Yeah, I say it was. I think I embrace my as a child. So I have two elder brothers. As a kid. So I used to look up. But me bado si I'm still in school, nafaa kumaliza holiday homework, kesho ni shule. Mi nikaamua kuwa kichwa ngumu. Asubuhi nimeambiwa stay home, finish nikirudi tunapitia. And then just at that same time, my dad had replaced key for the front of his car. So he had just an extra one, still brand new. He just had a crack on it. Alikuwa ameka like katikati hizi tanks zilikuwa kwa compound. I don't know how or why my brain told me if I use that thing to prop myself up, naweza panda juu ya tank na nilike fence na nicheze. No, that's an ADHD kid proper. Sijui akili yangu iliniambiaje that made sense. But so to make a long story short, ni tank mbili like these old school big Tata tanks ilikuwa side by side. So that glass windscreen ilikuwa hapo katikati. Glass like car windscreens are expensive, like stupidly expensive. Like replacing one starts from like 30K or something. It depends on where you get it. Even used, like car windscreens are fucking expensive. Accidentally kaniambia point edge. I had it crunching. Nikasikia kimevunjika, but I was like, nah, lazima nitoke nje nicheze the last day is school homework. So nimekanyagia chini. I used it to prop myself up kupanda tank, kuvuka fence, nikaenda kucheza. The place I was playing kwa njia, I initially saw my mom and dad driving past me wakiniangalia, knowing I'm supposed to be home nikifanya homework. And I saw them and I looked at them, and akili yangu ikaniambia acha tu niendelee tu kucheza, maybe they will understand. So nikaambia my friends kujini na mimi ndo nisisumbulie. Oh my god. The funny thing is, my dad he seemed chill because I tried to use them as a scapegoats. Wakuja na mimi ndo nisiulizwe maswali mingi nilikuwa wapi. He seemed okay, akawasalimia the other, akasema, it's okay, ingia kwa nyumba funga gates. The beating I got. That for me was the moment when I was like, okay, never ever, never ever not doing that again. And from that day on, that was the one mistake I ever did as a kid that got me a proper beer. That one, I I grew up with two brands. My dad had an old school, like the proper old school JVC sound systems. He yeah, he also had a record player, but I think that was like a Sanyo, and the Sanyos are old apparently. But I grew up around two main brands at that time. Sony and JVC were the prominent brands during the time. Sony, it's still in the mix. I think they pulled out of the Kenyan market, like the phones and everything. But I personally grew up with Sony CRT TV, zile ziko na kisogo big, ile yenye ulikuwa unazima ndani unacheza na screen juu inatengeneza sauti with the static. And I also grew up with a few JVC sound systems along the way. So Sony and JVC were the two electronic brands that I grew up with. Those are the ones that I saw most of the time as a kid. Or those are the prominent brands, I think, for most millennials and Gen Z that grew up, well, on a lot of Sony and JVC. See, I'm sure uliona JVC ukiwa mtoi, si ndio? TV ama no, hawako na TV. JVC walikuwa na TV. I swear the JVC ile sound system zile za 50 plus 1 CD changer hizo. But yeah, these companies, Sony and JVC, have been at this for the longest time. Like these are like legacy elites when it comes to camcorders and electronics. And I'm glad today we're getting to feature some of the cameras that a lot of people don't know we have. And we're going to talk about camcorders because people tend to overlook these things. But there's a camcorder here that costs the same price as a car, and I'm going to explain why. I'm going to explain why. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so one at a time, starting with the first one he was asking. Okay, shout out to the person viewing from Kampala, Uganda. Apostle, Apostle Daniel, thank you for joining us. To the guys watching us from Uganda, Kampala, thank you so much. We appreciate the support and we love and appreciate the fact that you watch our live streams. Thank you for joining us. Tell a friend, and if you're here to learn something, learn. If you want to ask questions, ask us questions, and of course, have fun, interact with us, ask anything and everything. I'm here to help. Yeah. The next question was for what exactly? Someone has asked about a 70 to 200. I'm going to need you to clarify whether it's a Sony, Canon, or Nikon or Fujifilm. Like I need you to clarify which 70 to 200 exactly that you want. But for now, today we are talking about camcorders, these massive machines that you see right here. I'm sure for a lot of people, like seeing this on the table is, I don't know, call it like a flashback, or I don't know, how would I call this? How would I call it? Like, Louis, if someone came up to you with one of these, what would you say it's for? Like, if you saw me with this, what would you think it's for? Church? This? Are you seeing what I'm holding? Louis, church or wedding? Okay. Well, okay, let me educate you. So this specific model, this one is a JVC, by the way. It's a camcorder, but this is like more or less the higher end camcorders that are used for broadcast journalism. So TV stations like BBC, CNN, big TV stations, and funny enough, they're also used for sports. If you Yeah, if you ever wondered like in stadiums like Nyanyo Stadium, Kasarani, how they get those insane shots where I'm saying and I zoom in from like a kilometer away. You didn't know this one. Yeah, but the different types of camcorders. This one is actually a modular camcorder, which means you can actually change the lens. Yes. Mm-hmm. 5D Mark IV is available. Sorry, to answer your question, yes, the Canon 5D Mark IV is available, and its current price is going for 5D Mark IV 360,000 shillings. Mm-hmm. Um, so okay, today's live. I'm gonna take you guys slowly. So today we're just going to dip our pinky toes. Actually, no, leo tunaingia hadi kwa depend kidogo tu, but that'll be towards the end. If you're a beginner to filmmaking, videography, broadcast, journalism, and live streaming, this is the live stream for you. Because as you can see on the table, I have quite a few camcorders. All of them range from entry level to beginner level to pro level. I wouldn't say these are like entry level, but there will be something for each level. So I'd say this is more a little bit for the pros, but I'll try to make it as easy as possible so that you can understand as a beginner or as an entry level person how these can affect your work and how they boost your work when it comes to video making. Yes. 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 The specs of this. Anwar Ali. One second. So, Mr. Anwar Ali, to answer your question, actually, no, I'll get into the specs of each of these cameras as we progress because it's part of the itinerary. So we're going to go through across each of these camcorders today, and I'm going to tell you some of the key features of each of these camcorders, how they work, the benefit of the camcorders when it comes to broadcast, journalism, electronic news gathering, and live streaming, and churches especially. So when it comes to the specific specs of each of these camcorders, just sit tight, hold on, stay with us through the live stream. I will be covering it in a few minutes. But for now, I think it's easier. Louis, what do you think? We get into today's topic? Let's get into it. So today we're going to be talking about camcorders. What exactly is a camcorder, you might be asking? Well, the best and simplest solution or the best and simplest way to describe a camcorder is an all-in-one videography production camera. So now that's not to say that cine cameras and DSLRs and mirrorless are not all-in-one production cameras, but the key difference that sets camcorders aside between camcorders and let me say DSLR and mirrorless cameras is the all-in-one functionality. So unlike, let's say, for example, a Sony A7 IV, a Nikon D7500, Canon R50, whereby you're getting a camera with a crop sensor and a limited amount of lens, and you can change the lenses depending on what you're doing, and also the video capabilities are limited. With camcorders, you're getting an all-in-one system that has the camera, the sensor, the inputs and outputs, that is the audio inputs and outputs, the video inputs and outputs, as well as a fixed lens that is inbuilt within the camera. So that is the key difference between camcorders and DSLR and mirrorless cameras, is that camcorders are meant to be an all-in-one production unit for videography, broadcasting, journalism, and live streaming, and especially these days for houses of worship. They are primarily used because of their video capabilities and the all-in-one compactness, because with this one camcorder, I have a powerful machine that can shoot 4K video with Sony S-Log. It can do slow-mo. It has a lens that by equivalent should be, if I'm not wrong, a 7 mm to 154 mm. So just think about that for a while. A 7 mm wide to 154 mm tight zoom lens with an aperture of f2.8 to 4.5. All of that in one kit that fits, well, relatively in one hand, that has everything you need from the get-go. Built-in ND filters, actual proper mic that you can actually use, which is something a lot of people don't think about, and the ability to have external XLR inputs, provide them with phantom power, and let me say, or let me call it, extended video codecs for video capturing and content work. So when it comes to camcorders and videography, these things are unbeaten. And to the guy out there saying, oh, DSLR and mirrorless have better video capability, I will prove you wrong today. Trust me. When we get into the specs of these camcorders that we have here on the table, you're going to hear for yourself why these things go for the price they go for, why they are special, and especially what sets them apart from DSLR and mirrorless cameras. So, starting off with why choose a camcorder? Simple. It's an all-in-one solution. The fact that it has built-in ND filters, XLR audio inputs, both, and actually most of them have two XLR audio inputs, long servo zoom lenses, reliability, an unlimited record time, and an ergonomic form factor. And something that a lot of people don't know
which is something called broadcast ready specifications, which is 422 10-bit codecs. Yes, Louis. Yes. For all of these camcorders, sorry, to answer your question, Dedan, for all of the camcorders you see here today, all of them have both HDMI and SDI outputs. So again, this comes down to what I'll be discussing later in the live of why camcorders are such good cameras for videography and why these things, in my opinion, beat out some cameras when it comes to video production. So if you're someone that does events, if you're someone that does ENG, if you're in broadcast, if you do live streaming, and especially if it's a house of worship, get a camcorder over a DSLR or mirrorless camera for these key factors. An all-in-one solution with built-in ND filters, XLR audio inputs, long servo zoom lenses, reliability and durability, an unlimited record time, an ergonomic form factor, and broadcast-ready specifications, which are specifically 422 10-bit codecs, and you especially need SDI outputs because when it comes to HDMI, unless you're using a HDMI video transmitter, HDMI signals tend to start degrading past 20 meters. However, with the SDI, it can retain the video quality over meters of up to 100 meters long. Yes, Louis? Yes. Okay. Okay. To answer you, Beverly, HDMI inputs and outputs is basically the way that a camera outputs video to an external monitor or an external recording form factor. So take, for example, this camcorder that I have here in my hand. This is the Sony Z200. It is the camera that has replaced the NX series, and it is an absolute beast of a camcorder. Now, when I talk about HDMI and SDI inputs and outputs, this is what I mean. So, for those of you that cannot see what I'm trying to show you, right here on the back of this camcorder, there are certain things called inputs and outputs. And when it comes to inputs and outputs, they determine a lot when it comes to your video transmission. Now, HDMI is, let me say, more or less a newer form factor, and it is prevalent in most DSLR cameras. However, even then, most of them use HDMI mini or micro, which is a very, let me say, finicky port because HDMI mini and HDMI micro ports, they have a lot of issues. So with these ones, you have HDMI, full-size HDMI outputs and SDI outputs. SDI basically means those SDI cables, the ones that look like the aerials that used to be on old TVs. It's basically that type of cable, but it outputs video signal from this camera out to an external monitor, a video switcher, a recorder, or something like that. That's it. HDMI and SDI are basically video output formats that these cameras have. And that's a key advantage that camcorders have over DSLR and mirrorless cameras is that you have that flexibility to use either HDMI out or SDI out. Okay, I've answered that question. Nice. So why choose a camcorder over DSLR or a mirrorless or a cinema camera? Simple. Run and gun speed and no rigs required, as well as no overheating, longer battery life, and an integrated optical zoom and image stabilization. So let me give you guys a simple scenario. Maybe you make the type of content whereby you do something like journalistic content, whereby it's you in front of a camera reporting on a specific matter. In that case, you're going to need a camcorder. Why? Because these things are built for ruggedness. These things are built to deliver such high quality in insane working conditions. Take, for example, a Sony A7 IV. Really good camera, incredible mirrorless camera with really good video features. However, the moment you start trying to use a Sony A7 IV for electronic news gathering, that thing will overheat in 1 hour and you won't be able to shoot any more content past that 1 hour until it cools down and goes back to working temperature. However, with camcorders, you are not limited to that. As long as you have battery life or an external power source that powers this via DC, this camera can go for days on end. As long as it has power and space on the SD card, camcorders can keep shooting and shooting and shooting. So unlimited record time on camcorders. That's and the fact that you don't need a rig to outfit this. Basically, look at a A7 IV again, for example. After you bought your cage and then you bought the rods and then you bought the small rig handle, you need to buy all of those and set them all up, which takes a lot of time. With this, the handle is here. It's very sturdy because it's a part of the body, and I have something that basically doesn't let go of the camera. So stability is also another key factor. So this is what I was talking about. With a camcorder, you have one camera in one big compact form factor that has everything you need for run and gun, filmmaking, and electronic news gathering. You have inbuilt lenses, you have built-in ND filters, you have both HDMI and SDI outputs, you have unlimited recording times, and especially a huge advantage is no overheating. And if you're wondering whether, oh, camcorders might not look as good as whatever, the PXW Z200 has better video codecs than the Sony FX3. So yeah, think about that for a second. And these things also shoot in logs. So you'd be surprised how many documentary filmmakers actually use camcorders instead of DSLRs and mirrorless cameras. Take, for example, I'm sure everyone is familiar with National Geographic. And let's say, for example, the Masai Mara wildebeest migration. Which cameras do you guys think they use? If your answer is camcorders, you are correct. But if your answer is maybe a Sony A7 IV and a 7200, your answer is wrong. Yes, Louis. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. So that's okay. So to answer your statement, then Dadan, to answer your statement, Dadan, all of these camcorders have a power direct option, which DSLR and mirrorless cameras do not have. That is a key advantage when it comes to camcorders and recording limits. Because if you have a camera which, even if you don't have a battery, but you have a power source there and ready, you have a camera that will keep recording for as long as it has power and battery life. Yes, Louis. Yes. Yes. The highest frame rate of the Sony Z200, guys, that's in the documents. Okay. Hmm. The highest frame that you can get out of the Sony Z200 should be 4K 120 frames per second. And something to note is that unlike most DSLRs and mirrorless cameras, something to note with camcorders is that unlike those cameras, these things don't overheat. I don't know if you guys can see, but right here I have quite a few vents for venting out heat. Same with the NX80, although this one looks a little bit more rugged. Same with the JVC, air vents for outputting heat. And even for this big guy right here, this one also has accommodation for venting out the heat from the camera itself. So, with that being said, the highest frame rate that the Sony Z200 can shoot should be 4K at 120 frames per second. So, that being said, I think we can jump into a couple of the features of these cameras. So starting off with this guy right here, this is the JVC HC500E. If you guys have ever been to KTN, Citizen, Nation, or even KBC, you might have actually run into one of these because we actually did supply, and we do supply quite a few media stations with camcorders I know Nation used the NX80. I think KTN used the Sony Z190. And for the guys that actually shoot at Kasarani Stadium, they actually use this JVC camcorder that you see right here. But the one that we're going to start with right now is this one right here, the JVC HC500E, the mobile broadcast powerhouse. Now, the key specs of this camcorder, number one, is a 1-inch CMOS sensor for good shallow depth of field and low light productivity. It can shoot in 4K at up to 60 frames per second in H264 or H265, depending on your shooting requirements. Yes, Louis. Uh, I'm good. The cheapest camcorder available for streaming is the Canon XA60B that currently retails for 120,000 shillings. These ones on the table here are not anywhere near 120,000 shillings. Starting with the Sony Z200, this Z200 right here retails for 542,000 shillings. Its bigger brother, the 280, retails for 742,000 shillings. The JVC HC500E retails for 800,000 shillings. And the JVC Pro HD, this is not the proper camcorder. This thing plus the lens retails for about 1.3 million Kenya shillings. So yeah, these guys are not cheap, but they do deliver. Trust you me. But anyway, yes, yes. Sports. No. Yes. Hmm. So take for example, if you've ever watched a football game, a cricket game, any game at all that's being covered live, if you've ever noticed how, take for example, like there's a camera that tracks a player across the field as they run, that has different angles and everything. Like for example, for a football match, around the pitch itself, there'll be the photographers who take the photos, but in the actual stands themselves is where you'll have the camera operators that provide those zoomed in shots of the players on the pitch themselves. So now that's where these camcorders come in. The ones that are used in stadiums are a bit more high tech than these. They have quite a lot more tech built into them. They have whole enclosures, zooming and tilting and panning on like handles and everything. Like they look like Air Force control systems, but trust you me, they're using camcorders like this with quite a few added accessories. So back to the JVC HC500E, a 1-inch CMOS sensor for good shallow depth of field and low light productivity. It can shoot up to 4K video at 60 frames per second in H.264 or 265, depending on your needs. It can shoot 10-bit 422 internal recording with dual SD card slots. So that means that if one SD card slot fills up, it'll automatically switch to the second SD card slot on board. It has onboard broadcast graphic overlays. So straight from the camera itself, you can literally have a scoreboard, you can have a lower thirds in the camera itself and have that coming out of the camera into something like a YOLO box and live streaming it direct from the camera. So you're seeing all of this versatility that's built into camcorders that are meant to make them all-in-one solutions. It also has dual XLR audio inputs. It has USB host mode for SSD or LTE bonding. That means that if you want to record not on an SD card but on an SSD, you can record directly from this camera, out of this camera, directly onto an SSD. And of course, it has FTP upload, and direct YouTube, Facebook stream. Now, that sounds a bit convoluted, but the basics of this is that all of these camcorders, specifically the JVC, the Sony Z280, and the Sony Z200, have a specific feature whereby the cameras themselves can broadcast or can push a signal via a custom RTMP to a broadcast or a live streaming device for live streaming purposes. Yes, Louis.
We have a question from Beverly anasema,
Yes.
kindly explain how to get an audio with a camcorder.
Yes.
Does it have input to mic or explain?
So that's the beauty of camcorders. Now,
Repeat the question.
sorry, to answer your question, Beverly, your question was how do camcorders pick audio? I'm going to use the JVC as an example. So right here on the side of the JVC, you have two XLR inputs, as you can see right here. However, even if you don't have, for example, if you don't have a shotgun microphone like this one, all of these camcorders come built in with their own shotgun microphones in the camera itself. So as you can see from the front of this JVC, this is an internal inbuilt microphone. This is an internal inbuilt microphone, and this is an internal inbuilt microphone. However, if you would like to add your own microphone in post, then all you have to do is buy a shotgun microphone that is mountable on a camcorder like this one. Let me remove this one. And this one actually comes with the JVC. This microphone actually comes with the JVC, and all you have to do, and you put this aside so that you guys can see. All you have to do is literally open this, mount in your shotgun microphone, screw it into place, take the XLR cable, line it up with the XLR inputs, and that's it. And that's it. Huge benefit of camcorders. So that's all you need to do to plug in audio into camcorders. And besides having two XLR inputs and a really good inbuilt microphone, the newer camcorders also have the capability to input 3.5 millimeter jack inputs. So if you have like these simple DJI Mic 2 lapel microphones, yes, you can still connect them to these camcorders and use them to provide sound for these cameras. But usually they come with really good inbuilt microphones mounted right here on the front of each of these camcorders. Good. I hope I've answered your question, Beverly.
Yeah.
Yes.
We have someone called Alafia
Okay.
from TikTok. Anasema, you mentioned it was an internet.
I laugh here.
So Alafia anasema have already ordered the items.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've already ordered the items. So maybe you can just tell him that someone's going to reach already.
Okay. Alafia, thank you for doing business with us. I don't know which items you ordered. If you would like to expound, maybe via DMs, you can expound. But thank you for ordering from us. We're glad to have you with us. We're glad to do business with you. And in case you see anything here today that you're interested in, that you want to invest in, by all means, ask. We will tell you. We'll give you the price. And if you'd like, maybe you can come by and check out these incredible camcorders for yourself. That being said, let me move on to the ideal everyday use for the JVC HC 500E. So, small churches and schools, especially for streaming and like doing these long format video content. And when I say schools, yes, surprisingly enough, yes, a lot of institutions, schools, both universities and schools these days use camcorders when it comes to, let's say, their film or photography clubs or the videography clubs or their AV clubs, whereby they learn about audiovisual or film and TV before they get into it as a career. It's good for solo field journalists who need shoot edit stream workflows. It's good for grassroots sports team for producing scores and live streaming. And it's good for portable documentary crews looking for high bitrate masters. Next up, we have the Sony PXW Z280. In my opinion, my personal favorite. I absolutely love the way Sony designed this camcorder. It looks good, it feels good in hand. It's using that incredible Fujinon lens, and I mean, just look at this thing. It looks absolutely beautiful. And its features are there to match because this has three 1.5-inch Exmor R CMOS sensors. Yes, Louis.
Do you know our numbers already?
Yes. Okay. If you're trying to farm works. Okay, I think farm auction is my client. Apologies, we're currently doing the live stream. I will attend to you as soon as I'm done. However, in the meantime, you can call our other number 011-323-7544, or you can call my number that's being handled by my colleague at 0722-764-900. Okay, so with that being said, let's get back into the specs. Yes, Louis. Okay. Okay. To answer that question, that was from Beverly. The question of the M50. Farmworks. To answer your question, Farmworks Kenya, the Canon EOS M50 is a long discontinued camera. Canon themselves abandoned the whole Canon EOS M mount, so they're no longer producing it, they're no longer selling it, we no longer stock it, and the lenses are no longer available. And I personally highly advise you to steer away from any Canon EOS M mount cameras or lenses. There's no after sales services or parts or lenses or any updates or anything coming to the Canon EOS M line. So, in my opinion, skip the Canon EOS M line. Just come and get a Canon mirrorless camera. We have plenty to choose from that have significantly better features than the Canon M50, such as the Canon EOS R50 that retails for 118,000 that has significantly better features. Okay, so with that, I think I can continue. Louis, Badu, any more questions? Okay, so the Sony PXW-Z280, the broadcast workhorse. This camera has three 1.5-inch Exmo R CMOS sensor for rich color and sensitivity. It can shoot 4K 60 with 10-bit RAW at 422 in the file format of XAVC intro long GOP, which sounds complicated, but the simplest way to explain it is it basically has Canon's, it has Sony's version of Canon or Sony's S-Log in a camcorder video format. It outputs 12G SDI output. It has two dual XLR inputs. It has dual SIM 4G LTE uplink and XDCAM Air Cloud integration. Yes, Louis. The M50. Okay. I already meant so to answer the first question, I already answered and said the camera that you can get as an alternative to the M50. Get the Canon EOS R50. Incredibly good camera. It's a mirrorless camera. It's brand new. I think it was released back in 2023. We have it in stock and it retails for 118,000 for a camera that comes with two lenses and has significantly better features than the Canon EOS M50. So keep that in notes. The Canon EOS R50 with a dual lens kit. And to the person asking where our location is, we're located along Kenyatta Avenue, right next to Sorovo Stanley. You cannot miss us at a building called Westminster House. I will repeat that again. Kenyatta Avenue, along along Kenyatta Avenue, right before Sorovo Stanley, at a building called Westminster House. If you put in our name on Google Maps, it will bring you straight to this location right here. So back to the Z280, it has dual SIM 4G LTE uplink and XDCAM AirCloud integration. It has face detection autofocus plus image stabilization and an electronic variable ND filter. It has Wi-Fi, FTP, and QoS streaming, and it can also be remotely controlled by your smartphone. Ideal for everyday uses such as breaking news for ENG crews. ENG crews refers to electronic news gathering crews, quick turnaround packages, corporate events, town hall meetings or official parliamentary meetings, freelance shooters delivering broadcast ready files on sites, conferences and companies, and also finally events and wedding videographers. Yes, Louis. For the Z280, yes. Actually, the Sony Z, sorry, to answer your question, the output coming out of the Sony Z280 is significantly cleaner and sharper and better than the Z200. The Z200 is its smaller brother. It does actually benefit from Sony's newer color science. So the color science might be richer and more vibrant on the Z200, but in terms of spec, sensor for sensor, the Z280 still delivers significantly better video capabilities than the Z200. Okay, now we move on to the Sony Z200 itself. Now, this one has three 1/3 inch CMOS sensors. It can do full HD at 60 frames per second or 4K at 60 frames per second in 10-bit 422. It has a 20 times optical zoom range of f1.6 to f3.4. So, let me repeat that. So, this camera right here, the Sony Z200, has a focal length range of 7 millimeters to 154 millimeters, and it has an aperture output of f1.6 to f3.4. So even at the maximum zoom range on this camcorder, we still have a camcorder that at 154 millimeters zoomed in completely holds an aperture of f3.4. That, in my opinion, is insane considering this is an all-in-one system that's built into this small space right here. And it also benefits from Sony G Master color sensitivity. Sorry. Okay, sorry. It also benefits from Sony's new color science. So this is an incredibly powerful all-in-one workhorse for camcorders and for videographers who need a powerful camcorder for electronic news gathering and also for broadcast journalism, for event and corporate photography and videography. Yes, Louis. Okay, so the Blackmagic 6K is not a camcorder. The Blackmagic 6K is a cine camera, and that is not what we're discussing today. Today, we're talking about camcorders, and that is the focus of our live stream. So, what or where is the Z200 ideal for? This is ideal for wedding and event videographers needing proper, good cameras that can shoot for significant amount of time without overheating, and has an all-in-one system that doesn't require you to change lenses or worry about lighting and microphones and all of that because you have an all-in-one system. It's also ideal for schools and colleges building broadcast curriculums. So ADMI are using these camcorders for learning the FTV students. It's good for budget newsrooms that are delivering broadcast journalism. Like let's say for example, if you're doing stuff like Citizen, NTV, or you want to start your own podcast journalism studio, this is the camcorder to get, and especially for houses of worship for providing live SDI camera feeds. Next up, we have this guy right here, the JVC HM850RCHE, the shoulder mount broadcast beast. Now, this camcorder that I have in my hand is, in my opinion, one of the most insanely powerful camcorders that I have ever seen to date. This thing has three 1/3 inch CMOS sensors with an interchangeable 20 times zoom Fujinon lens. This thing can output 1080p at 50 MB per second with a H.264 plus dual codecs proxy recording. It can live stream over Ethernet, Wi-Fi, or custom RTMP. It has dual SD card slots for relay and backup recording. And it has 3G SDI out, timecode sync, genlock, and full electronic news gathering connections and connectors. Ideal, yes, and it is no, sure, no, sure. And it is ideal for, let me say, for example, for companies like Super Sports, for guys that want to like do sports journalism, for guys that want to do broadcast journalism, and TV stations and alike. It's also good for multi-camera sports or B with synced genlock, good for government and legal video documentation, good for university journalism departments teaching electronic news gathering. So let's look at some of the camera comparisons between the cameras that we have here. Starting with the JVC HC500E, which is this, which has a 1-inch CMOS sensor. There's the 280 has three 1.5-inch CMOS sensors. There's the 200 also has three 1/3 CMOS sensors. And the JVC HM850 has three 1/3 inch CMOS sensors. This one maxes out at full HD 60 frames per second. The Sony Z200 maxes out at 4K 60 frames per second. The JVC maxes out at 4K 60 frames per second, and the Z280 maxes out at 4K 60 frames per second. All of them have built-in SRT or RTMP, which basically means that you can live stream the video coming out of this camera directly onto a system as long as the connection is via the same Wi-Fi. So that means you don't necessarily need to use a cable. You set a custom RTMP, the camera outputs it from the camera itself, and then you log in to your laptop or your PC or your broadcast system, um, input that custom RTMP, and get the direct live video feed coming from the camera into your live streaming setup for live streaming capability. All of them have dual XLR inputs. All of them have dual SD card slots. The JVC HC500E has a dual SD card slot, and it can also use USB SSD drives. This one has dual SD card slots. There's a 280, there's a 200 also has dual SD card slots, and it can also use SSDs. And the JVC HM850 has dual SD card slots. All of these are handheld, but the JVC HM850 is actually shoulder mounted because of the interchangeable lens. And finally, the best use case for each of these camcorders is for, starting with the JVC HC500E, mobile run and gun filmmaking, documentaries, and live streaming. The same goes for the Z280 and the Z200, and especially for schools, churches, houses of worship, sports television stations, broadcast journalism. I personally highly recommend starting off with the Z200. And if you need the extra quality and the durability and the capabilities of a proper Sony camcorder, by all means, invest in the Sony Z280. With that being said, Louis, do we have any questions? No questions? Okay, so with that being said, that was today's live. We've talked about these camcorders. I've told you guys a little bit of what sets these guys different compared to their mirrorless and DSLR counterparts. And I hope in my case today, I've set the stage for you guys to consider opting for camcorders for your next project. So if you're a house of worship, if you are a broadcast journalist, if you are a broadcast journalist media station, if you are, for example, a sports broadcast station, if you are a TV station, if you do live streaming, if you even record podcasts and the like, consider investing in a camcorder for the video and audio capabilities, because these things are built to last. They're reliable, they have incredible video capabilities and audio capabilities, and at the end of the day, having an all-in-one system that simplifies your life and your workflow makes these things absolute beasts when it comes to speeding up production workflow. So with that being said, my name, yes, yes, the DJI, to answer that question, you've asked whether we have the DJI Osmo Pocket 3. The DJI Osmo Pocket 3 is currently out of stock. It has been out of stock in Nairobi for quite some time. We are also currently awaiting stock, and it will be here hopefully at the end of this week. With that being said, my name was Victor. This is Cameras Africa. Thank you for joining us. And if you want any of the camcorders you've seen here today, come by the shop, hit us up in the DMs, And as always, my name is Victor, and I will see you very soon. Peace out.